Buenas dan saludos para hamdos todos ni Mangagi Pago. Mangagi talugo inita siga kumuntinua hina kung ki publiko gi manera ni ginagawa gobyerno para tanai ahensya siya no ni necesidad niya winning imamayla no sakan. Da antes di tatungo kwanto para tanai dini imamayla no sakan ni sita taketungalo ke kwanto tagagasta pago no sakan. Da ko masa ni sita pat sinya ta kapun dididi that no apasi debita. So, pues ito naman gagawin pagugingin ng tuluan ng continuous stay committee. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you very much for joining us. We're continuing the hearing on the request of the administration for the FY 2013 budget. And as part of the effort to determine what is needed in 2013, we of course are trying to determine how much are we spending in 2012. As we all know, both the governor and I speak on many occasions about the deficit and the need to address that issue. And so when we look at the resources we have today, what are we doing? What are we paying? What are we not paying? What obligations are we deferring that would just require us to pay it at a later date? And so this afternoon we're going to focus on the increments that are due employees of the government of Guam pursuant to the merit system, of course, and applicable rules, regulations, and laws governing employee compensation. And so we wanted to get if each of the departments and agencies to put on the record exactly how they're handling it this year and what are they doing. What we would like to do at this time, we have, of course, BBMR here represented, and then the other departments and agencies which are outside of the BBMR control, and that's the purpose of some of you that have been requested to be here. I'm going to go ahead and start with, I'm going to call the judiciary up as well, Barb, because I know you have to go back to negotiations. Yes, so, and then of course, the Office of the Public Auditor, represented by Public Auditor Doris Brooks here, has also a family funeral that she has to deal with and continue and attend. And I want to express our condolences. John also worked with me, as you know, is a good long-time friend. So please continue to extend my condolences to the family as well. So, Madam Public Auditor, they've all been sworn in. I think everybody's been here in the hearing before, right?
The budget hearings.
The
yes.
budget hearings,
Yeah.
they've all been sworn.
Yes.
Yeah. And again, what we wanted to do is the status of the. There's two things that govern, of course, the increments. One is the performance evaluations by the supervisor of the employees, and whether those have been put on the record, and then whether or not you've actually implemented the payment of the increments for your personnel in your respective departments and agencies. So, Madam Public Auditor.
Well, thank you again, Senator Pangelinan, for giving me the opportunity.
Before you begin, I want to recognize and thank my colleagues who are here with me this afternoon. To my far left is Senator Eileen Yamashita, who's ever present, I think, and of course Senator Tom Ada, who's also has a constant presence during this process, and we thank them for their presence this afternoon.
Well, again, thank you very much, Senator, for giving me the opportunity to speak first. First of all, let me just say this is truly a very important topic, and I have, and OPA would not be where it is today were it not for the good and dedicated staff that I have. I think personnel, and in my case, staff is the most important asset, because what we do are reports, and that requires professionalism and dedication. And I just want to say that my staff have been very professional, and I would not be where I am today were it not for them, because they're the ones in the trenches doing the work. I just kind of direct them and all. So this is a very important topic, and I take the evaluations very seriously. We have always performed them, and fortunately, we have always given them their increments when come due, because OPA, even though it is an independent agency, for all practical purposes, all that is being administered by Department of Administration. Let me just take the opportunity to kind of show you as far as the concerns that we have with this. I know that DOA is here, but it continues to be problematic for OPA with regards to recruitment. We are now down to 12 employees, just 3 more than when I started back in 2001. When I started back in 2001, I had, of course, I was a staff of 0 and built it up to 9 in my first year. The high point we had was 19 employees in 2006 or 7, and then it's just been kind of a downward challenge to even maintain. We had reached a high point last year with 16 people, but again, our employees are always very highly valued. I've lost them to nearly UOG, GCC, GPA, GWA. They go to private, DOE, those places, because those agencies, with exception of maybe UOG, have their own version of a Hay study, which has been implemented now, senators, for more than 3 years, and they're going on, 3rd and 4th. So one of the things why I'm here personally to request, and I did this in my budget hearing, is to ask for overtime from my auditors. We're always inundated with more reports, more requests for reports. In a letter to Senator Cruz, I said, I want to do those audits. We have audits in progress. I really do, but I don't have the resources. Right now, I'm still waiting for DOA to give me, Auditor 1. I found out just yesterday from Vince here that we had a candidate who was our intern, accepted another position at EY because, he put in his application. It was a very long and laborious process. He put it in, but he said he can't wait around for another month or 2, hoping that he might make the list. And I don't blame them. And this is the challenge that we're facing. But in addition to that, the overall department is not competitive. It's not competitive at all. And so one way that I'm asking, I don't know why auditors are deemed to be exempt and therefore not eligible to have overtime, yet other professionals such as nurses, firemen, police officers and all are eligible for overtime. But auditors, for whatever reason, are deemed to be exempt. So I want to assure you, we are good stewards of our funds. We would use this very prudently, but this would be a way to very small, incrementally increase our staff resources, as well as to a limited degree, give them additional compensation. And so therefore, I ask that you consider allowing OPA auditors to be non-exempt so that they would be eligible for that. Again, it is a very important topic. I know that you're having problems with the budget. My personnel costs are lower than before because we are down. We will have probably more than $300,000 in lapsed funds. And so we are able to give those increments. And if we had the ability, we could give, very prudently, overtime on an as-needed basis so that we can finish and get some of the reports out timelier and quicker, a faster turnaround.
Well, one of the reasons why we wanted to do this, because we looked at, and we'll get to that when we get to BBMR, we looked at the what was budgeted for salaries, and then what the projection for where we would end up with salaries at the end of this fiscal year. And there's almost an $8-10 million gap. So we budgeted 121, which was inclusive of the increments, and our current expenditure rate to end the fiscal year, both OFB and BBMR's projections will be at 112 million. So there really is room to pay the increments and still save money. We will not exhaust all of that with paying the increments. The total increments, I think, would be about $3 million, which is inclusive of the executive branch and all these autonomous and semi-autonomous agencies. So it's still, if we paid the increments, we'd still save, a significant amount of that salary, and we wanted to kind of get that gap. So
Well,
But the performance evaluations are being done?
yes, definitely.
Okay.
And Vince here can attest to that.
Okay, all right. And have you requested for the release of the allotment, or is it just? It
No, my
doesn't matter.
allotment is,
You
my
have
allotment.
the ability to
yes.
pay it. It's just that you've responded to the governor's executive order freezing them, or?
No, I met with the governor to ask that we not be frozen.
Oh, so you're not?
No, we're
So
not.
So you have paid your
Yes.
So you've implemented the increments for your employees?
Yes.
Okay, all right. I just wanted to
Yes.
put that on the record. Okay.
I'm not aware that they've frozen them, and none of my employees have come to me to say that they were frozen.
Okay.
Okay. Because we have submitted our evaluation forms, and they have gone in, and they have been implemented because, you know, they're staggered.
Yes.
And depending on when their time is. You know. But no employee at OPA, right, Vince, has ever told us that their increment did not go through.
Okay.
I'm not aware that it has been frozen.
All right. Thank you very much, Madam Public Auditor. Senator Eda, Senator, no questions? All right. Thank you very much,
And I
Madam.
appreciate you giving me the opportunity to go first.
All right. And we're going to ask Bobby to go ahead also and make her presentation. I know she's involved in the health insurance negotiations. She's going to go back there, save us more money
Yes, sir.
next year.
Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity to speak ahead of schedule. That's greatly appreciated. My name is Barbara Jean T. Paris. I'm the Human Resources Administrator for the Judiciary, and I'm here to report relative to the judicial branch. We have been conducting the performance evals and been awarding the increments in such as personal actions and obviously in the employees' payroll. So we have done that at the beginning of the fiscal year and to present.
Okay. And all of that is built into your budget as well?
Yes, sir. In our budget presentation, we did include the mandated increments.
Okay.
in that
And you've been able
appropriation.
to do that did they put it even with the 15% reserve? You've been able to
Yes.
prioritize those?
Yes, and the increments have been paid out to the employees.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Okay. Any questions? Yeah.
Thank you very much, Speaker Ben. Thank you for being here. I just wondered if you might be able to email me what your performance evaluation system looks like.
Sure.
Thank you. Thank you,
You're
Speaker Ben.
welcome.
Bobby, do you have just a general idea for what your increments are? I think I have it.
About just a rough estimate, Senator. I'm sorry, I don't have that. Maybe about 300,000.
Judiciary, 178?
Oh, 178.
So we're not talking about
Savings.
huge
No.
chunks of money,
No.
really. And these are, as you mentioned, some of these are employees that may have not had any kind of increase in 2 years, or
That's correct.
because of the fact that they're longer tenured.
The appropriate
employees.
waiting periods, which is the 2-year, the 18 months. Right.
All right. Any other questions?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
All right.
Thank you, Senator. Thank you,
Thank you very
Senators.
much. I'd like to go ahead and then give Mr. Pangelinan an opportunity to kind of report on the executive branch itself, which are under the direction or control of the governor's office and such. John, you want to just present us with a review?
Thank you, Senator. Basically, I'm here for the hearing for the increments and personnel evaluation. We are still conducting the personnel evaluation, and increments are being withheld as of 10/12/2011. And that's per Executive Order 2011-14, and it's still in effect until it's rescinded.
All the evaluations are being done, the employee evaluations.
Per the Executive Order, item 2,
Okay.
it says that no executive department director or committee authority or delegate shall recommend, process, or otherwise implement a salary step increment for any employees. Annual performance evaluations for classified employees shall continue to be performed in accordance with personnel rules and regulations. Now, for this executive order, I have to assume that all 30 departments, 40 departments are doing their evaluations as required. Again, evaluations are based on supervisors and through the appointing authorities of each department, they have to comply with the personnel rules and regs. But as you know from years of experience, sometimes those are delayed.
John, can you tell me what happens to employees who are funded by federal funds? When you freeze these increments, what happens to the federal fund portion or that increment portion of their salary at the end of that fiscal year for these federally funded positions or federally matched positions?
For federally funded or matched positions, usually the salaries or personal services are part of the grant. And if the increments are part of it, then they're part of the funding source. But if the increments are withheld, as per this executive order, then the increments, as far as I know, will not continue for that period of time the executive order is in effect. Depending on if it's 100% and it's continuing and is a ongoing thing that's renewed every year, they will, they will continue the withholding until such time, again, the executive order is rescinded. If it becomes an obligation, then that's something that we have to work with the feds to see if prior obligations can be taken care of with funding that may be considered new funding. So that's something that we're looking at. But as I understand it, the increments is across the board. There's no exception.
Would the if we didn't resolve the issue, would the money be returned to the feds?
Well, our funding, the grant funding is always, we try to use as much as we can, but it depends on how the departments manage their funding. If the funding is available, they would request for reprogramming for other items if at the end of the year and the end of the term of the grant there is lapse funding. We would try to maximize the best as we can. As it relates to the increments, then again, that would, if there's a renewal of a existing grant, then I would think that they would continue for the funding for the same issue. But again, we have to work with the federal government. All grants that are received by Guam from feds require that they follow state rules, and that would also apply to the executive orders.
Would there be a chance that at the end of that fiscal year or the end of that grant period, that the following year, if we had an obligation, as you mentioned, prior year for those unimplemented portion of the increments, would the grant allow the payment of that, or?
It depends on the grant. Although there's a common rule for all grants, the fact of the matter is that each grant has their own rules and regs. So you have to look at each department, each U.S. department that offers the grant, and if there is a pending obligation and they agree to it, then they'll pay for it. If it's it's not part of the grant, or if it's not planned well, and usually they would plan ahead in terms of these grant applications. So I would think the departments would include it in their grant applications for a pending item that would be available the following year.
I see Mr. Mason from the Attorney General's office. Could you join us at the? Thank you very much, Mr. Mason. Mr. Mason, we also we're given what you've heard with regards to, for example, Mr. Pangelinan mentioning that the performance evaluations for these employees are being performed and implemented, but the implementation of the actual payment is withheld. What happens in that case, and what is the opinion of the Attorney General with regards to that obligation to the employee?
Well, the obligation continues because this was done by executive order,
Uh-huh.
and there's specific law that says these increments are to be granted to the employees. Excuse me. That's clearly by law, and so the executive order cannot negate that obligation. Now, of course, the governor, I guess, looks at the finances and BBMR, and they're the ones that have to spend the money, and so the governor, if there's not sufficient funds available, then I suppose he could freeze it. Well, he has frozen increments, and our agency, in fact, is following that. Although we are doing the evaluations, we're not paying the increments. But that obligation still remains. And so if the executive order were to be lifted by the governor, the obligation is still there. Of course, the legislature, by law, that's a different thing now. If the legislature could put the funds in the budget to pay the increments, and then the increments have to be paid at the time there are funds available. So if we're under the assumption now that funds are not available to pay those increments. So at the time funds are available, those increments are owed to the employees by law.
Right. So freezing the increments and not paying them out really does not result in any savings, because that, if you don't pay it, you will owe it at some point in time in the future. So
That-
if the concept of freezing the increment is to save money, doing it by the process of executive order does not really save us any money, because it's like not paying the income tax refunds is not really saving us money, because we've had to go and borrow $310 million to pay it when it just gets too big.
Well, I guess what it does is, it puts off the obligation.
Right. So it just defers the obligation and does not eliminate it.
Yes, not unless the legislature steps in.
Okay. All right. So, thank you very much, Mr. Mason.
Do you need? no?
And again, you're saying that the Attorney General is complying with the executive order
Yes, the Attorney
with
General.
regards to not paying it out.
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. All right. Jeff?
If that increment is eventually going to have to be paid off, is that going to be paid off with interest? In the same way that when the tax returns, I guess, are withheld and delayed, it accrues interest, correct?
You know, we have not opined on that specific issue, and so I would be giving my opinion just off the top of my head, and I appreciate the question, Senator, but I don't feel I can do that.
Sure. Senator Munoz-Barnes? Senator GMHA?
Thank you very much, Speaker Ben. You know, with my experience with federal grants is we work at applying, putting the proposal in, we get granted the money based on a variety of aspects. And then we don't spend the money, and many times we do give the money back. And then the next time around, they give us a lower ceiling because we don't use the money. And, you know, I'd be really interested in finding out how much money we do return because the increments that were figured into the proposed amounts that were actually awarded, you know, are frozen. And, you know, I understand why, I believe I understand why the executive order was issued, but I think it's problematic that when there's the funding sources there, that at the end, and it's earned, that it is not paid out and stuff. So I'm interested, sir, in the amount of monies that actually are not expended accordingly and how much is actually paid back, how much we're losing from that particular avenue.
We'll get to that. Senator Barnes?
Senator Massey, Mr. Chair, I just wanted to share the same sentiment as my colleague Senator Ada when it comes to increments and the timeline of when these increments will be given back to the employees based on, thank you, based on what exists in law today and how far has the administration looked into making sure that what's due to the employees within the line agencies, has there been a timeline to at least pay that, because we, as in the past, we don't want to end up and making the what's owed back to the employees bigger than the same thing we did with the retirement. I really have a concern regarding that. I mean, I know that we have to live within our means, but if it's already been allotted, we've got to find some kind of creativity to make sure that they're given back, they're given what's due to them. So that's my concern.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Mr. Mason.
Thank
Mrs.
you.
Massey. I'd like to then go ahead and call, I see the University of Guam is here. Is GCC here as well? Why don't you just come on forward as well? And I see the public defender. We have one more chair up here. Okay, we'll go ahead and start with GCC.
Half a day. My name is Joanne Munya. I'm the HR Administrator for the Guam Community College.
Thank you very much, Ms. Munya. Ms. Munya, can you just give us, I guess, the status of the increments at the Guam Community College with regards to the employees?
We have two classifications of employees. We call them the academic and the non-academic employees. The non-academic employees fall under the classified civil service or DOA umbrella. The Guam Community College did not freeze the salary increment for our staff. Although there was an executive order, our interpretations of the executive order is that it did not apply to the Guam Community College. So to this date, we have not frozen salary increments for our staff.
Okay, so, and of course, in order to pay them out, you're performing the evaluations as required by the applicable regulation?
Absolutely.
Okay, all right. How about, I'm just curious, how about the Hay study? What is the status of the Hay study? I know that it was reversed in some instances, but can you give us the status of what happened with the Hay study at
Sure.
the Guam Community College?
On October 1st of 2010, through the Governor's Executive Order 2010-25, we implemented the Hay study for our staff. Then with Executive Order 2011-12, we wrote it back on October 13th, February 13th, 2012. And again, because the 2011, the Executive Order specifically specified that we had to.
Okay, so you rolled back the Hay study?
Yes,
so
we did.
It has not been continued at the Guam Community College?
No, it has not, based on the current executive order and the laws.
Okay, all right. Senator Wright?
I'm just curious, Ms. Munoz, what was it in the, you said that your GCC's interpretation of the executive order about the increments did not apply, your interpretation was it did not apply to GCC. What was it in the executive order which led you to that conclusion?
Sure. We also had this communication with the Civil Service Commission because by law, for our classified staff, we are subject to a post-audit. So we submit our personnel action every month as required by law to Civil Service. They audit it, and the question that was posed by the Civil Service is they asked us what was our position regarding the executive order. And we basically stated that the executive order states that this order applies to all line agencies and instrumentalities of the executive branch of the government of Guam. Whereas if you read the previous executive orders that implemented Hay and rolled back Hay, it indicated all agencies, autonomous, semi-autonomous, etc. So that was the difference in the executive orders.
And so GCC is not considered an instrumentality
Of the executive branch of the government of Guam.
it is not considered?
Correct.
Okay. All right.
Thank you, Senator Adam. Thank you, Ms. Mooney.
Good afternoon. My name is Donna Lujan, and I'm the currently the Acting Chief Human Resources for the University of Guam Human Resources Office. And I'm here to report that the university continues to conduct performance evaluation reviews for all of its employees. However, we have not awarded any salary increments for this fiscal year.
Okay, so, and you did that pursuant to a board pursuant to the executive order?
It was pursuant to the executive order, and our Board of Regents adopted it through resolution.
Okay, so basically it's by the adoption of the Board of Regents of the executive order
Yes,
that caused you to continue to freeze it, basically?
correct.
Okay, all right. Any questions for the university? Okay. The public defender?
Good afternoon, Senators. My name is Bernadette Chargoliff, and I'm the Administrative Director with the Public Defender Service Corporation. Like those that have gone before me, I'd like to thank you for this opportunity to be here, and I'd like to verify that the Public Defender Service Corporation does pay salary increments to our staff and pay adjustments to the attorneys.
Okay,
Performance evaluations are in fact conducted.
okay, and you're able to do this under your present budget ceiling and
Yes,
allotment
Senator.
releases?
Within authorized appropriation
Operations.
levels.
Okay, so you're not getting any kind of additional, okay. Senator Wendy Martin?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just want to ask Mrs. Chargla, based on the mission do you guys fall under the judicial branch or the executive branch?
We've been adjudicated to be a part of the judicial branch.
Okay, just wanted to verify that. Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, University Public Defender. I'm going to go ahead then and call up, I see Department of Education is here. Guam Hospital. Okay. We'll go ahead and have the Department of Education respond. Again, basically the question is, how is the department currently handling the issue of increments? DOE with its large federal grant, how does that work, and what do you think the effect of the freeze would have on the federal grants and the liability as opined by the Attorney General would continue to accrue, and how that would affect DOE?
Good afternoon. Here to report that the Guam Department of Education is currently complying with the executive order, which means that we are continuing to perform our annual performance evaluations, but we are not implementing salary step increases. For the current fiscal year, we estimate that we are talking about roughly 1,400 classified employees, and we are estimating the annualized cost of those increments to be $1.8 million. We became aware of the Attorney General's opinion, and in our discussions with BBMR have shared our concerns about the potential liability for the department. With regard to our federal funds, of course, we worry that we worry about being able to pay out that obligation using those federal funds before they lapse or expire. Because of that, of course, it raises these other issues about equity and parity with our locally funded employees. So we want to make sure that if we do have the opportunity to utilize the federal funds versus that obligation falling to the local side, that we're able to do that. But of course, we would prefer to keep the their locally funded colleagues compensated as well, at the same scale.
Okay.
Thanks.
The $1.8 million, is that just the local funding side, or is that the total cost of increments for the DOE?
That is the total cost. On the local side, we're looking at $1.6 million, $1.55 million, and roughly $240,000 on the federal side for this fiscal year.
And if you were to get your allotment release, would that, would you have the budgetary capacity to be able to pay that without any additional appropriations?
Yes, we would.
You would. Okay. Would that, and that would be also contingent on the release of the 15%, correct?
Correct.
Yeah. And so without that 15%, never mind the increments, you just won't be able to pay salaries, period. Is that
Right.
pretty
We have earmarked this amount as part of that discussion regarding our 15% reserve and the allotments.
Okay. Any questions for you?
That was like the ship.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
June?
Yes, my name is June Infante, Acting Chief Financial Officer at GMH. Anyway, we are following the executive order. We are doing performance evaluation but not paying increments this year. We have about 980 employees, and we don't have any federally funded positions. The value of the increment is about $500,000 for this year.
June, the freezing of the payment of the increments, was that also adopted by the board?
I was asking Liz that. She can't remember. Remember our new CEO came in around February last year.
Right.
So, and our board came in around April, so I'm not sure. I tried ask to list Claros about that. So our board just came in around April last
Liz,
year.
do you?
I think it was part of the budget.
Oh,
Encumbered it, and it was not.
it was not budgeted. Okay.
That's true. That's true. We didn't budget for it.
Okay. Senator Muñoz.
I do apologize. I wanted to go back to DOE for a second. How many federal employees does the Department of Education have to date?
The information we have right now is really just the number of employees that are affected, which is about 230. I don't know about the total. Do you know, Tony?
Between 600 and 800.
Federal employees,
Federally funded.
federally funded. So saying again, the implementation of the increments that are due to the employees of, the classified employees of this line agency, doesn't work the same with the federal employees, or does it work the same?
Yes.
It does work the same.
It does work the same.
So the total amount of employees affected would be the total number that you stated, which is 1.8 million plus 200-some thousand for the,
1.8 million includes around, so there's about 1.5 million, between 1.5 and 1.6 million dollars that is on the locally funded side.
oh, okay.
And an additional 240,000,
Understand.
yeah, for the local,
Okay.
for the federal funding.
Thank you. I appreciate it, Mr. Chair. Just wanted that clarification.
You're welcome, Senator.
It seems that we're basically inquiring about 2 points here. One is, are the performance appraisals being performed? And secondly, have you paid the increments that then normally come with the performance appraisals? And everybody so far has come up and says, yes, we are doing the performance appraisals. But I think that kind of begs the question of to what, how would you put it? Is all the performance appraisals being performed, those that are due in the month of May or whatever, 100% of them are performed? And I ask that simply because I came from a large organization before where, I mean, trying to get people to put in perform the appraisals in a timely manner, sometimes you have to just go after them. So are you in fact getting 100% of your performance appraisals completed, or are we running like a few batting average is about 80%?
I was going to say that we are, because I've seen the paperwork come across my desk. Tony says that in some cases we are not getting them on time, and we are following up to make sure that they are done.
Okay. Okay. All right. So for the record, for the record, then GMH is probably accomplishing about 95% of the appraisals on a timely manner. Okay.
Okay. Thank you very much. Thank you. John, is anybody else here from any of the other agencies?
Oh,
Oh, okay. All right. John, we wanted to kind of get to when we received, of course, as you recall, the spreadsheet that was prepared by BBMR, and in the spreadsheet we had the budget for payroll for under Public Law 31-75, and the total for the budgeted amount for the executive line agencies was $121,092,804. And that was the amount budgeted. The BBMR projection, which is 10 months actual plus 2 months projected, shows that at the end of the fiscal year, we will have paid out $112,554,380 for salaries. And so what would you how would you break up that difference between the 121 and the 112, that $9 million? Why would you think we would have a lapse of that figure in this, and why would we withhold the? I mean, is the governor aware of this, that in fact what we budgeted and our revenues are pretty much tracking what was budgeted? So what would be the cause of this lapse, and why would we want to not pay this now that is current and due to the employees, when according to the Attorney General, if we don't pay it, we're going to owe it to them anyway? So why defer it if it's budgeted and we're actually going to have a surplus in the in that salary line?
Senator, I would have to defer to the executive order, and that's a policy call. So my response to your question is that till the executive order is rescinded, the increments will remain frozen.
No, okay, I understand that. But then let me go back to, is anybody from DOE leave already? DOA rather? Oh, but you're not on the accounting side. You're in personnel, right? Okay. I was hoping that Ms. Kakigi might have been here. So, okay. John, then the question I have is, if you take a look at what was budgeted and what's projected to end up as being the cost for the salary line, what do you see there happening that would cause that approximately $9 million lapse? Or surplus, I guess.
For ever since the beginning of the fiscal year and the previous, we've been holding the line. We've been denying recruitments if we can deny them, and only look at emergency positions that are required on an emergency basis. Our whole goal for this whole year was to keep costs down, and we've done that. Hopefully, to show, and that would account for the $9 million.
Yeah. So it's not like people get deployed and therefore we're not paying their salaries, or you've actually been very conscious about how do we hold the line on this thing and exercise your authority over the allotment process and the GG1 approval process to not exceed the expenditure level.
Yes, and that's accounted for. That's due to also the 15% reserve. We're trying to ensure that we lower our deficit. In addition to the bonds, we also have operational deficits that we're trying to also cover.
But even with the 15% reserve, we're still, again, we still have to pay the salaries. You can't reserve 15% on the salaries because you got to pay the full salary of the employee. So the 15% wouldn't account for this line item to finish in a surplus. It'll be not filling the vacancies and not replacing some people, which is even, to me, even more critical. If we're asking people to work harder because we're not hiring new people, or we're not replacing those that leave, and so we're asking them to work harder, that we would at least implement the increment that is due to them. Nothing extra, nothing above ordinary, just what is due to them by virtue of their tenure within the government of Guam and the requirement of the rules and regulations and the laws of that. So again, that we're hoping that what we'll see is maybe some kind of, given BBMR's own analysis, that we'll see some kind of reevaluation on this issue, because we're seeing the inequities result in terms of the GovGuam employees, and I think that, number one, we don't want to perpetuate that inequity. Number two, we're going to owe the money anyway, because given the way that the executive order was structured, it guarantees that we owe the money anyway. So if we don't pay it now, when we have the money, we're going to create a deficit and add that amount to the deficit next year. So rather than do that, I would rather not grow the deficit, but more importantly, give the employees what they're due, most especially because the revenue numbers, the collections support implementing it, and others have been implementing it as well. So we're hoping that you'll relay that to the administration as a result of this meeting. We'll do the same from my end, but certainly as the administration's representative here today, that's the message we'd like for you to bring back.
I will report to Jarvis on the request.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much, Mr. Pangelinan. Any other questions? Any other comments? If not, we'll go ahead and recess once again this hearing as we continue to work through the budget process. And any new announcements of any additional convening of this meeting will be through the 48-hour notice process. So thank you very much, and we're in recess.